Set in Spain, the movie begins with Galois, a handsome young man who captivates women not just with his looks, but also with his mathematical knowledge. He talks especially about gold box conjecture, one of the oldest unsolved problems in history. Although Galois has managed to solve it and now plans to show it to the public, his small street performance ends when a friend calls him from his apartment about an emergency. It turns out someone has trashed his room and his research on Goldbach's conjecture just days before his presentation. He's left with nothing. 4 months later, we meet Hilbert, an elderly mathematician who usually plays chess with his doctor friend. During one of their games, Hilbert confesses that he recently attempted to end his own life. To cheer himself up a bit, he reads a letter from a man called Fermat, who is inviting the country's best mathematicians to solve a puzzle in 10 days. Meanwhile, an inventor named Pascal is going crazy trying to solve Fermat's numerical riddle. As he struggles to find meaning in it, a librarian asks him to arrange some books in alphabetical order. That turns out to be the key. The numeric sequence is also in alphabetical order. Thanks to this, Pascal solves the riddle just before the 10-day deadline. It turns out only 4 people have correctly answered Fermat's puzzle. Each of them receives an invitation to a remote location to solve the biggest mathematical enigma in the country. They're also instructed not to use their phones. The 4 meet at the agreed spot near a river, and to remain anonymous, they each adopt the name of a famous mathematician from history hence. The names Pascal, Hilbert, Galois, and Oliva, the only woman in the group. At that moment, a car on the other side of the river signals them with its headlights. The mathematicians have no choice but to row across in an old boat, only to discover the car is empty. However, it's not completely abandoned. They find a digital assistant, PDA, hooked up to the car's GPS system. The 4 get in the car and follow the GPS directions until they reach an abandoned warehouse out in the countryside. Inside, they come across a stylish room, which they begin to explore while waiting for their host, Fermat. Galois mentions that he tried to research Fermat but found no information at all about him, like he's a ghost. Just then, Fermat appears and sits down with his guests to chat enthusiastically about various intellectual topics, from math to riddles. But before he can talk about the famous enigma, Fermat receives news that his daughter has fallen into a coma. He rushes out to the hospital, promising to return in an hour. In his haste, Fermat forgets his jacket. Pascal goes out to return it to him, but the old man has already left. Out of curiosity, Pascal searches the jacket and finds a photo of a young woman whom he seems to recognize. Meanwhile, Hilbert goes back to the room and finds Galois and Oliva kissing. The elderly man announces his return so as not to create an awkward moment. Seconds later, a still concerned Pascal returns with the jacket, in which Galois discovers multiple ID cards showing Fermat's real name, Roma. Suddenly, the PDA activates with a mathematical riddle they must solve in under a minute. The group forgets the mystery of Fermat's identity to focus on the enigma at hand. While Pascal examines the walls, Oliva, Hilbert, and Galois work together to solve the riddle. As much as they tried, they fail at first, which causes the walls to move, making the room shrink. Pascal notices this before the others and quickly sounds the alarm. After a brief moment of panic, Pascal helps them solve the puzzle just in time, and once the PDA confirms the correct answer, the walls stop moving. The PDA gives them no respite, sending the next riddle, a series of 1s and 0s that look nonsensical. Immediately, Galois tries to solve it with some game pieces he found, while Pascal examines some documents. During his investigation, Pascal discovers that Fermat designed the room so that hydraulic presses would push the walls in whenever they answer incorrectly. Desperate, Galois, Hilbert, and Oliva try to stop the walls from moving by jamming shelves and other objects in place, but they can't do anything effective. At that moment, Pascal remembers that a month ago, he accidentally ran over Fermat's daughter. The photo in the jacket was of her, so the whole situation with the shrinking room is the father's revenge against Pascal. However, the others still don't know why they've been locked up in this place. Returning to the first problem, Galois manages to solve it, although another riddle appears immediately, making the walls move once again. The room has shrunk so much that the light bulbs are about to break, but the 3 men manage to save them while Oliva concentrates on the riddle. After she solves the problem and stops the walls, the group tries to talk about their lives and figure out why Fermat put them there. Pascal then points out that the original mathematician, who was called Pascal, died at the same age Pascal is now. So the rest look up the ages of their respective mathematicians and notice the same pattern. They're all there to die at that specific age. The PDA spits out another puzzle, so Oliva jumps to solve it while the men lower the shelves and anything else they can in an attempt to hold the walls at bay. Although Oliva manages to solve the puzzle, a new one quickly appears. Galois already knows the answer, but suggests they not submit it yet so they can catch their breath and finish rearranging the room. In an attempt to build some kind of barrier to hold the walls in place, they toss the PDA among all the objects. When the timer hits 0, the walls start closing in again, and now they can't find the PDA in the mess. Amid the chaos, they stumble on a letter from Fermat inviting Roma to the game, which doesn't make sense because it looks like he's inviting himself. At first, that's what they think until they realize the Fermat they met at dinner is actually named Roma, and the letter gave him instructions to call himself Fermat. That's a mystery for another time, because they finally find the PDA and enter the correct answer, stopping the walls. Meanwhile, Roma arrives frantically at the hospital, only to discover his daughter is stable and that the call was a lie. The real host of this macabre game has used him like a pawn, and he has no idea what the other participants are suffering. Back in the room, Oliva suggests that the real Fermat might be the one who sabotaged Galois' presentation, though Galois believes it was just someone envious. While they argue, Hilbert notices that Oliva knows Galois far too well. She confesses they used to date for a while but broke up after he accused her of being unfaithful. In the game, they only pretended not to know each other to avoid making the others uncomfortable. They need to focus on the current riddle again, but can't solve it in time, causing the room to shrink bit by bit. While Hilbert works on the next puzzle, Oliva shares her side of the story. Some time ago, she played an online chess match against a highly skilled opponent who beat her in just a few moves. This made Oliva obsessed with that player, and she was so fascinated that he invited her to illegal parties on a yacht. While Oliva is telling this story, Galois can't hold back tears, realizing she was indeed unfaithful. After hearing all that, Pascal suggests that the chess player might be the one who created the shrinking room, but Oliva insists that person is in the room with them. Furious, Galois throws the PDA violently, not caring that their lives depend on it. When the walls start to close in again, Pascal deduces that the mastermind must also have been the one who called Roma. He quickly rules out Galois, as Galois was present when Roma received the call. The only one missing at that time was Hilbert. Calmly, Hilbert admits that he is the real Fermat. The others open his briefcase, finding copies of their invitations and confirming their theory. Besides, Fermat had already intended to end his own life, so he doesn't care about getting trapped with them. Pascal, Galois, and Oliva decide to call Roma, but Fermat assures them he installed a poisonous agent in that old man's car that could kill him in minutes. Sure enough, Roma is stopped by traffic officers for trying to answer his phone while driving. He tells them about his hospitalized daughter, which earns the officers' sympathy. One of them even gets into the car to accompany him. Unfortunately, as soon as Roma fastens his seatbelt, the poisonous mechanism activates. He loses consciousness and ends up plunging down a ravine along with the policeman. Back in the room, Fermat finally confesses his reasons. He spent most of his life working on Goldbach's conjecture, only for some young university student to solve it before he could. Fermat felt his entire existence was meaningless and thought about killing himself. But first, he wanted to meet Galois. When he learned Galois' research was sabotaged, Fermat sent him an email, though Oliva was the one who replied, marking the start of her relationship with him. Later, Fermat managed to solve Goldbach's conjecture, but since people would credit Galois with the discovery, he set up this entire shrinking room to test the boy's true intelligence. To do so, he used Roma as a puppet so the authorities would think Roma designed the room for revenge against Pascal. Everyone else was just collateral damage. Hearing this, the young man confesses that he never actually solved Goldbach's conjecture. He pretended he had the answer just to win back Oliva's love. In fact, he himself destroyed his research, so no one would blame him. At that moment, Fermat realizes that he is indeed the first person to solve Goldbach's conjecture, and even in this dire situation, he remains prideful. Galois knocks him out with a punch, and Pascal scolds him because the old man was their only chance of learning how to escape. Pascal also points out that the real Hilbert did not die at the same age as Fermat, so their companion must have a backup plan. Searching for clues, the three spot the word libertad, freedom, written on the blackboard. They start knocking on it until they discover a small manual elevator. Oliva goes first, followed by Galois, who takes Fermat's documents on Goldbach's conjecture. When it's Pascal's turn, his pants get stuck among all the debris, but he manages to remove them just in time to escape through the elevator and avoid being crushed by the shrinking room. In the final scene, we see the three of them rowing on the river, while Galois wonders if he should publish Fermat's research under his own name. In response, Pascal throws the papers into the water, earning Galois' scorn as he exclaims that the world deserves the answer to that problem. Pascal just looks around calmly, pointing out that the world still runs smoothly without it.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.